Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. As always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy, what is it, Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday? It's Wednesday. Happy hump day to you and yours. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day, whether you're here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere, and I hope that you are too. Go check me out. A lot of things going on, man. It is so crazy that, we just look at the world that we're living in right now in the sports, and the March Madness is upon us. I cannot wait for this weekend. It is going to be absolutely bonkers. Great show for you guys lined up today at 12:15. Marc Topkin is going to join us from the Tampa Bay Times. The latest with the Rays. Topper actually broke his kneecap. He's on the IL, but he's going to join us at 12:15 today. So thank you to Marc Topkin from the Tampa Bay Times. At 12:40, we're going to talk a little Buccaneer football. Does the signing of Bryce Hall, which happened yesterday in the 4 o'clock hour, does that kind of make you lean one way or the other of where the Buccaneers are going to draft, right? In the upcoming NFL draft, does this preclude them from drafting a corner or not? Also at 1 o'clock today, Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com, joins us on the program for his weekly visits. What about the Bolts? What were they doing at practice today? What does the lines look like? There was some difference there with the lines at practice. So Double E will tell us at 1 o'clock. And then at 1:30 today, Ollie Bassett is going to join us, Tampa Bay Rays midfielder. He's going to pop by and say hello. Also a hello from a very special friend we have here. Joe Boo stops in today. Say hi, Joe Boo. There you go. Joe Boo in the house. Everybody say hello to Joe Boo. Bringing good luck, getting rid of any kind of shenanigans or tomfoolery. You know, Joe Boo's always been a really good friend. And, he's always here right by my side, making sure that the show goes off without a hitch. And Joe Boo's here to remind you, if you ever have any tough times in life, just look to your closest friends. Look to your family members. And even if you get into an argument or a disagreement, it's no big deal, right? Joe Boo says it's great to forgive and forget and to just move on. We love Joe Boo, and I know you do too out there. He's always right here to my left, bringing us good luck here on the Recher podcast. So shout out to Joe Boo, and no sacrificing any fake chickens. You can just go like we did that one time we were trying to help the Lightning last year and get some Publix fried chicken. Remember that? It didn't work out for the Lightning. So maybe, I'm not going to condone that here on the program. We are definitely PETA friendly. All right, so let's start off. Did anybody watch either one of the first two MLB games? Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers win both games over the Cubs, and then come to find out this morning, waking up, watching it a little bit, and seeing that the audio and the video weren't lined up. It showed that the pitch tracker actually was happening 2 or 3 seconds before the actual pitch was thrown, and then you find out that Jason Benetti and AJ Pierzynski are not in Japan. They're back here in the States. I just saw a stat that like over 25 million people saw it in Japan. But how many people here domestically saw it? Again, great to grow the game internationally, but what did that do for our fans here stateside? What did it do for our fans here locally? I don't think it did anything. If anything, it had the adverse effect. And sports, especially the ones that need to garner more attention, and I'm not talking about the NFL here, but I'm talking about the NBA, I'm talking about baseball, I'm talking about hockey, I'm talking about soccer. You have to be very careful with how you promote your product, because as much as some people may say, oh, any publicity is good publicity, I don't think so. In certain scenarios, maybe, but for this, no, not good. And we have a couple of examples here just in the last couple of months. What the Four Nations face-off did for hockey. I think was the greatest example of something that was outside of the regular season play. Now, I know there's a difference between a game that actually means something, like these first two games mean something as far as, how you attribute it to the regular season standings, as opposed to, what people thought was going to be a glorified exhibition. That didn't work out. It wasn't no glorified exhibition. You go tell me that those players for Team USA and Canada and Sweden, Finland, that it didn't matter to them. It mattered a whole hell of a lot to all of those guys that were involved. Just look at those 3 fights in the first 10 seconds. Remember that? The NHL did a great thing. So now when there was an announcement today about what's going to happen with the 2026 All-Star game, it looks like they're backing away from it. It's supposed to be there at the UBS Arena there on Long Island with the Islanders, but I doubt, at least in the very near future, they're going to go back to the standard All-Star game and All-Star skills competition. You have to have some kind of stakes. You have to have some reason for people to tune in. Because if you go back to just the regular All-Star festivities we've seen the last couple of years, it's a tune-out. It's not a must-see event like the Four Nations was. When you're doing something like this, when you go to these international games, you're trying to grow the game international. But man, isn't there something you can do here locally to entice people to tune in? Anything? I thought the promotion of it was terrible. I thought the execution was even worse. And for a team, for a game, for a league, for a sport that is very tone deaf when it comes to reaching a new audience, this is just another fail. It is. You have the biggest star on the planet, and you did such a piss poor job of marketing that he was going to be playing in his home country. Dave Roberts, I saw that Shohei was nervous after the first game or before the first game, which I think, let's learn a little bit more about Shohei Ohtani. The biggest thing, think about it like this, right? All right, here, and thank you to Nick. We're going to get to that comment in a second, buddy. But what do you know about Shohei Ohtani? If you're just kind of a casual baseball fan, what do you know about Shohei? You know that he is a hitter and a pitcher. You know that he's Japanese, and you know that he was involved with a gambling scandal with his interpreter, right? You may know he's on the Dodgers. You may know he won the World Series. You may know about the World Baseball Classic. But other than that, all right, he's got a dog, a nice dog. But what else do we know about Shohei Ohtani? One of the biggest problems with baseball is that their biggest star, we don't know anything about. We know very little about what makes Shohei Ohtani tick, and that is a huge problem. You just went to his native country. And again, Major League Baseball did a piss poor job of promoting it and executing it to the fans back in the States. There's still, again, it's tough for me to feel like those games are all that important when you have teams over here playing spring training and exhibition games, right? It just doesn't make sense. They don't get it. They don't get it when it comes to Major League Baseball. And they're not the only ones, right? Because you see what the NBA has done now with the All-Star game and the slam dunk competition, 3-point competition. It is it's a minor blip on the sports calendar every single year. It has nowhere near the impact that we've seen in years past. Nobody's clamoring for Michael Jordan against Dominique Wilkins again. Nobody's clamoring for Larry Bird to win the third, 3-point competition. It's everything's just jokey and funny, and people are more interested in probably the celebrity all-star game more than anything else. It's just so weird. Such a haphazard way to promote your product. And that's something that these organizations, these leagues need to look into. They're just kind of throwing money. They're throwing money away. It's just pretty wild. And there was an announcement today, as I mentioned, about Gary Bettman saying that, the All-Star game in 2026, he's backing off from that. There was also a comment that President Trump and Vladimir Putin have been talking about doing a U.S. versus Russia series. You had to know something like that was going to happen, right? I think we all, Trump is a guy, and again, this is not one of those things where we're not getting political here on the program, but we do know that Trump kind of flies by the seat of his pants. He marches to the beat of his own drum. He does his own thing, whether he's the president of the United States or not. And we know that he's got a long-standing friendship with Vladimir Putin. We know as much from our pal Phil Esposito, who was friends with both of those guys. So the fact that they had a discussion about there being a U.S. and Russia hockey tournament or hockey game or so, that doesn't surprise me at all. I know for a fact that all of the nations and all the players that were not involved with the four nations were not happy. How could you have a best-on-best tournament if those teams weren't involved? There's certain things when covering sports, and this is, and I get it, guys. I heard this the other day. You don't necessarily have to go to the games to be able to cover the teams or blah, 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 blah. All right, fine. But I don't operate like that. I think that you should go to the games. It gives you a different vantage point. I think talking to other members of the media to get insight is helpful. I think talking to members of the media for the other teams is helpful. I think going inside the locker room and inside the clubhouses and talking to these players and being there at the press conferences, I think that's important. I think that you're shortchanging yourself from doing your job if you don't at least make some semblance of an effort to go to these games once in a while. You may not have to go as much as I do, but every once in a while, going to these games and being up front and being able to talk to these athletes, I think it goes, I think you're doing your listeners and your viewers a disservice if you're not doing that, because there's parts of those interactions that cannot be found when you are at home and when you're sitting on the couch and you're just watching the game like everybody else. So that type of thing is very, very important. And one of the things that really sticks out to me was being at the All-Star game last year in Toronto and watching Draisaitl and Pasternak sit up there and having to answer questions about the four nations. And they were so pissed. You're talking about two of the greatest players in the game, two of the greatest players of this generation, one representing Germany, one representing the Czech Republic or Czechia now. And they're just like, what do we care? They were just so disturbed. It wasn't like they were like, whatever, and they just kind of brushed it off. No, they looked like they felt like they were left out. And I don't dispute that. And I know the Four Nations was a good thing to grow the game, but they need to do something now going forward to be able to include these guys from these other countries. We know who represents the teams from the Four Nations, but the fact that you have a competition without a Draisaitl, without a Pasternak, without a Roman Josi, right? You can't really say it's best on best without those guys there. You have probably the best right-handed shot outside of Ovechkin. You have Draisaitl, who's been a goal scorer and might score 60 this year. And you have Roman Josi, who is, one of the best defensemen in the game and has been for a long time. So the marketing for these leagues and these competitions that may not just be your standard regular season contests, there has to be more of an involvement when it comes to everybody, when it comes to the promotion, when it comes to the execution. Because even if you knew about them, even if you watched it, were you entertained? Is it going to make you want to come back? I know for a fact that people that tuned into the Four Nations face-off tuned into some hockey games after that. They were wondering, when's the next time we're going to see best on best? When's the next time we're going to see international competition? When is the Olympics? Are we going to be involved in the Olympics? Is it professional athletes? It caused a stir and it created more questions. When are we going to see these guys again? When can we see these guys now play on the same team after going at it? When are we going to see those guys that just fought play each other in a regular season contest? I look at what happened with the major leagues and looking at this game with the Dodgers and the Cubs, and it's two pretty big fan bases too. Outside of LA and outside of Chicago, can you really tell me if you're a diehard or even you're a casual baseball fan, did you get up early to watch it? Was it a big time story around the water cooler? Was there a buzz about those first two games? And if you can't, without a shadow of a doubt, say yes, did it really achieve what it needed to achieve here domestically? And I would say the answer is no. Internationally, again, the number's huge. If that's what their goal is, and it probably was, then fine. But there is a disconnect between baseball and trying to grow the game and make it more entertaining and the people here in America. That's why they're trying to speed it up. That's why you put the pitch clock. That's why you're trying to find ways to keep fans' attention. And this is not an example of one of those things with this series. At least not here homegrown, not here domestically. Because now, can anybody tell me if there's another game? If you ask somebody, will there be another game tomorrow? Some people say, I think so. I don't know. That's not good. All right, let's bring him in. Marc Topkin from the Tampa Bay Times. He's on the IL, but he took some time today. No video for Mark today because he's got a lot going on. And listen, I don't care about the video. I'm just glad you're here, and I'm glad you're okay, my friend. How are you, Topper?
Doing all right, Jay. Doing all right. Took a little tumble at the field Saturday down in Port Charlotte and broken kneecap somehow. So if you're big and old, don't fall down hard on a sidewalk.
So should we put money against you leading the league in steals this year?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to give Caballero and Chandler Simpson a run for their money, but I think that's probably off right now. Yeah.
No Esteri Ruiz for you for Halloween this year, my friend. That's for sure.
Not at all.
I want to ask you this real quick, Mark, because I think you're such a unique person to ask this, because people have asked me over the years, 10 years at iHeart and now doing this, Jay, why do you go to all these games? Does it really make a difference? You're there all the time, going to as many Rays games as you can. What is that difference? Because you have covered games in the past from home. What does that give you? Because I think the listeners and the viewers of this program really want to know, what, other than just being able to just have a normal conversation with guys, but what kind of advantage do you get by covering the games in person versus doing it on your couch?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're referring to the COVID years where we did, a season and part of another season remotely. And, for the road games, totally remotely. For the home games, kind of quasi remotely, where we were in the building, but we weren't allowed to talk to anybody directly.
Right.
So, we'd be doing Zoom interviews from, rooms 50 feet away or 100 feet away or whatever. And look, we all learned and it's created an industry that's allowed, I'm sure some of the things that you use to make your podcast so successful are a product of things that you refined or that were refined during the COVID era. But yeah, there's nothing like being at the stadium. There's nothing like being in the room, and it goes beyond the obvious. I mean, you can, in a way, sadly, but our industry, my industry, your industry, has evolved where people don't just want to know what happened in the game. They can find that out their own ways. They can watch it live. They can watch a replay. They can stream it. They can watch a very detailed 3D animation of it that almost looks like they're watching the game, right? I mean, so you have to go beyond what happened in the game. And I'd like to think that, we and I at the Tampa Bay Times and a lot of other people in our market do a good job of that. Why did something happen? What were the alternatives? What could have happened? As far as the actual game action, but also covering a sports team. And this is fairly obvious right now in the period of time we're in with the Rays, but goes well beyond the actual games. It goes beyond who's on the roster.
Right.
It goes beyond the roster moves. And, look, being with the team allows you, to be around people that know things, that can tell you things. It allows you to see things happen. It allows you to notice, even if something as simple as a guy getting called into the manager's office. It allows you to have a sense of what players are becoming, but also, with major things that involve the franchise, being there helps. I mean, whether it's to get, live reaction, going up and talking to a player or a staff person one-on-one that you have a relationship with, I'd like to think you're going to get better stuff than you are when someone's trotted in front of a laptop for a Zoom interview, right? So there's no doubt about that. And that access is a privilege I've had for the first 27 seasons with the Rays, covering them for the Tampa Bay Times. And hopefully as soon as this leg heals, we'll be able to resume here. I mean, I'm not ruling out opening day yet. I'm not sure if the medical people are on board with that yet or not. There's a couple follow-ups coming up tomorrow and another one on Tuesday, so we'll see what the initial report is. But yeah, there's no doubt in any of our versions of our industry of journalism and sports journalism, being there is just not matchable by being remotely. Even if you can get people on the phone, even if you can get them on a Zoom, even if you can text them and email them, it's still not the same over the course of a given day, week, month, whatever you want to look at as being there.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, being on a Zoom call or watching it on TV can't really describe, Evan Longoria going out there before everybody else and doing his warm-ups. Willie Adames getting out there and working with Rodney Linares, hearing the crack of the bat from Junior Caminero in batting practice. So that type of stuff is always disseminated with our friends over at the Tampa Bay Times. I said this with Colleen joining us the other day. Guys and gals, everybody out there, you know how much it is important to me to support local nobody more important than our friends at the Tampa Bay Times. We've had everybody from the Times here on the Jay Recher podcast. Please, you don't realize what one subscription does. So please go out there, buy it for a gift, buy it as a gift for somebody. But especially with baseball season right here, spring training, NFL free agency, and obviously with the hockey and everything going on with the stadium and all things Tampa Bay Times, go get a subscription today. I got one and I go there every freaking day, man. I don't know what I would do without it. Mark, the latest on the Rays Stadium, man, it's so crazy. I was at Jefferson High School last night with the legendary Pop Cuesta. He was talking to me about it, and you want to talk about somebody that's been around baseball for the last freaking 70 years or so. But I mean, just how this whole thing has come to be from, man, here to stay, shovels in the ground, the day of excitement to now. I mean, how can you put that into words?
I don't know if you're under like FCC restrictions or not. So
No.
I better be careful as to what word I use.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, let's just say a less polite version of messed up. Maybe starts with a consonant that's right in the alphabet. But yeah, look, it's a mess, and yeah, I don't know that you or I want to go through the time and the painstaking details of all of the blame and all of it to be assigned. But I think it's fair to say there's a little bit of blame to go around to a lot of different people. Certainly the focal point most recently has been the Rays, and specifically, the owner Stu Sternberg, because they were the ones who had the final piece to this and announced that they were not going to meet the March 31st deadline to comply and go ahead with the deal. There are conversations going on to continue other avenues to resolve this. I'm sure there are. I think the most heartening thing, if you're a Rays baseball fan, and you've got to trust someone in this, right? And I think at this point, I think you got to trust Rob Manfred, who's been pretty clear and pretty specific in saying that Commissioner of Baseball and that he wants to keep the team here. They want to keep the team here. He's going to work personally with local leaders to try to make that happen. Does that happen under Steve Sternberg's ownership? Does it take a new owner? That's a question I don't think any of us can truly answer. We can offer opinions and thoughts, and fans have as well, but I don't know if any of us really know the answer to that at this point. There certainly seem to be some people out there who have groups or say they have groups that would seem legitimate options and maybe have better connections or better rapport relationships to get something done here. But it just, it's unfortunate that the hurricanes caused the incredible damage they did to our entire community. And obviously a part of that was the Rays stadium plans, things that the city and county had to prioritize as well. So, it looked done, right? I mean, we had the announcement.
Yeah.
We had the press release with the vote. We had the vote. We had the press release. We had the press conference. They had a party, and then they did the T-shirts. If you do the T-shirts, that makes it official, right? The Here to Stay T-shirts. They're out there. They did the T-shirts. So I thought it was done. I thought we would have a day in January. I mean, I'm not like I didn't pick a specific day, but like just in some family stuff for January. It's like, all right, let's kind of keep a couple of these, a little bit of this clear, because I think we're gonna have a groundbreaking to go to and cover, and kind of a cool thing to be at. I remember being involved with the groundbreaking of the Trop, and thinking it'd be kind of cool to see the groundbreaking of the second stadium, and now here we are, where I don't know if it's quite back to zero, but it sure feels like it's back to zero.
Yeah, it's sad, man. I mean, being around baseball and just to be able to hear even somebody like Ken Welch, who's really put his face out in front of this entire thing, and even when things have gone up and gone down, he's been so vocal in support. And then what he had to say about the bridges being burned, you're like, oh my gosh. So I guess it's just a wait and see, and let's try to build the Tropicana field back up and see if these other investors. I know I've been hearing the last couple of days, being around at a bunch of baseball fields here locally, that Joe Malloy and DeBartolo are certainly interested. But it's one thing to be interested, right, Mark? We've heard this for many years, that there's a lot of people that are interested, but you got to be able to put kind of your money where your mouth is to go from there.
And just to interrupt you for a second, and it takes two, obviously, right? I mean, one of the Joe Malloy group has certainly been the one that's come forward, and with a name and with some connections. There's another group that says they want to do a bigger entertainment thing. There's maybe a third or fourth group that want to build in Tampa, but yeah, you have to first, the group has to be whole, be financially capable to do it, and they have to be able to engage with the Rays, who have to be willing sellers too. So there's still a lot of this, like I said before, that I just don't think any of us can honestly answer factually until the Rays and these groups just even have conversations or not, if they've even had those yet of any significance.
Yeah, no doubt. I did hear the other night that Joe Malloy has spoken to Stu Sternberg. I heard that from multiple people. But again, conversation is one thing. Actually engaging in a sale is completely different because there's a lot of steps that go in that process. The team on the field, Mark. I mean, I feel bad because it's just like these guys have to deal with all the aftermath, and they're just kind of putting their hands up, like, dude, we're pitching and hitting and running and trying to play good defense and trying to win the division. How have they looked? I know before your injury, like how have they looked so far? I know it's not the end all be all, but as far as kind of the process is gone, I mean, other than Curtis Mead, who seems to, he fell out of a war. He fell out of bed and gets 2 hits every day, which is pretty wild. Who else has stood out to you so far in spring training?
Yeah, Curtis Mead had a day where he got 2 hits and his batting average went down. So that tells you all you need to know about how good his spring has
Right.
gone. Yeah, he certainly has looked good. Some of the relievers have looked good. Mason Montgomery looks like exactly as he did toward the end of last year, where he came up and just was throwing lights out. There've been a couple some newer guys that have impressed. Erik Erlendsson is a guy that Cash has mentioned a few times. Has had a good spring. That he came back in the series trade. Mason Englert, who they got right as the start of spring training, he's looked good too. So there have been a couple of newer guys. Eloy Jimenez has had his moments, but we kind of went into this thinking it was going to be he versus Curtis Mead for a spot. You probably got to think Curtis Mead's ahead of that right now, but
Right.
we also know things happen. I remember the one year, dating myself as I always do when you get me going here, but Ben Zobrist got hurt like the last day of spring training one year, and they had to shuffle the roster, make a couple of moves related to that because how he played positionally. So nothing has super stood out. I think it's been a good spring for the Rays in the sense it's been no major injuries, no major controversies, no major disruptions. There's certainly some players that they're counting on offensively that haven't shown much yet, and they're gonna. How spring training goes. If somebody does well, it's a great sign that they're ready for the season. If they don't do well, oh, it's only spring training. It doesn't matter. So, it's the most like pliable, results oriented thing you can kind of spin out of that. But I think they're in a decent position. I mean, obviously the pitching, especially the starting pitching, is going to be a key. If they don't make a trade, it looks like they'll end up keeping all 6 guys. So whether that's like a piggyback situation with a couple of the starters, like initially, I think Rasmussen will be like in a 4 to 5 inning mode. So
Right.
maybe they pair him up with Shane Boggs, or they pair him up with Zach Littell or something like that. So there's some different ways you can use 6 guys and still kind of call it a 5-man rotation. But they feel good about the bullpen. Fairbanks looked a little better the other night after the super rough outing a week or so before that. So watching him over these last few days, and the offense is. We talked about last year for a lot how bad the offense was last year, and that's what did them in. And a couple of changes. Certainly, Danny Jansen is the one guy that seems like he can make a difference and provide some stability behind the plate. Hassan Kim when he's ready, but that's going to be sometime in May to join the infield. But a lot of this is going to come down to guys like Jonathan Aranda doing what he did the last month of the year, Josh Lowe doing what he did 2 years ago, and not the repeating last year, which was definitely interrupted by a series of injuries that kind of set him back. Christopher Morel being more like the guy they thought they were trading for than the guy that they saw over the last 2 months last year. And Junior Caminero is probably the most talented guy on the field anytime he's in the lineup for the Rays. But being 21 and being able to do that, 150, 160 times a year versus in short bursts and then have your downs is kind of the sign of making it as a big leaguer.
Mark, when it comes to Junior Caminero, is he the most, I don't want to say touted, but is he, as far as excitement goes, if he's not number one, where is he as far as like the most exciting young player going into camp that we knew that was going to start with the club? Because it's been, you have the years where the guys come in the middle of the season, right? Willie, the shortstop that shall not be named. But you know what I mean? But like there's been some young players, but as far as Junior goes, he's just one of those guys where I think because of what happened, in the winter and because of like the big smile, and I just feel like there's an excitement about him that have been rivaled by few ever in Rays history.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I think I've gotten to the point where my memory is blurred enough that I don't ever like to say ever. Certainly the expectation of Evan Longoria, coming up in '08 when they didn't bring him up, and then a few days into the season, they get the contract extension signed and suddenly he is ready to go. Carl Crawford was an in-season guy with a lot of hype. So there've been some guys over the years, but as far as kind of the current era, referencing, I will name him and referencing Wander Franco previously. But yeah, Junior Caminero, he's played 50 games in the big league, seven, when he got called up at the end 2 years ago, 43 last year, would have been up sooner if he hadn't had the quad issues. Had his moments. I mean, hits the ball
Mhm.
super hard. The data shows you that. But, it was up and down a little bit during that 43 game stretch last year. What he did this offseason in the Winter League and the Dominican League, the drama of that home run, the bat flip, the massive homer, the 3 hour base trot around the bases, whatever it was, and the heaping praise on him from his manager Albert Pujols. I
Right.
mean, that's not a guy known to hyperbole, right? So Albert
Mhm.
Pujols is saying he's one of the best young players and he's part of the future of baseball. So I think all that's good. The Rays, I think, have been, very positive about it, but kind of making sure to not like create unrealistic
Right.
expectations. Junior's kind of said first day Adam Berry and I talked to him. He said he wanted 30 homers was kind of the goal. Then the other day he said he had a goal in mind, and we said 30. He goes, I'm not saying, that's so maybe he's raised the goal a little bit even.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that the talent, the personality, it seems like he's got a good sense about him of not getting too wrapped up in things. So we'll see. But it's also think back to when you were 21-year-old Jay, and
Oh
if you
boy.
had everything sitting in front of you, it's easy to kind of get ahead of yourself as well. So let's see how he plays, and he may be a guy where getting off to a good start just has the right mental and positive reinforcement that it really helps.
When I was 21, I was on the field like Junior Caminero, but I was at North I was at Northside Little League, like Kevin Cash's old Little League, coaching camp from a bunch of snot-nosed 9-year-olds here in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah,
So
when you
a
said
little
you were
different.
on the field like Junior Caminero, I was hoping there was going to be a pause or a comma there. So
Yeah, not necessarily the same as Junior. Before I let you go, Mark, give me an idea of where you think, and I know it's tough so early in the season, but we know with Garrett Cole going down and Heel being banged up, I mean, there's kind of an opening a little bit there when it comes to the Yankees and their vulnerability in the starting staff. Uh, I think if we learn anything is never to trade a starter, right? Because you just never know. A couple of years ago, it was like, oh, trade a starter if you're the Rays. The Yankees, oh, yeah, let's get rid of Marcus Stroman. Now they're very glad to have him. Where do you see kind of this American League East shaping out? I know we don't know how the entire roster is going to look like until the first day of the regular season, but just based on kind of early returns, it seems like the Rays are going to be just kind of in the hunt there for the division.
I mean, I think so. I think this is a year where you can make a case reasonably legit, logically for any of the five teams.
Right.
Yeah, I think everybody's got a flaw, and I think everybody's got some strengths. And Boston's obviously got some good lineup pieces and some starting pitching, but there's some questions about their bullpen. Baltimore's got the young offensive players, but there's some questions about their rotation. The Rays, there's some maybe asterisks on some of their pitching because some guys are coming back from shortened season or from injury, but they have potential to be super good. But there's some questions about their lineup. Toronto's kind of living in the shadow of what they didn't do, right? They didn't get
Right.
any of these guys they chased. They didn't sign Vladdy to an extension, but they've got a pretty solid team overall, it seems like. I mean, trading out the closers to get Hoffman instead of Romano. We'll see how that plays out. I thought Romano was pretty good,
Yep.
what they had there. And I think and then obviously the Yankees, you take Garrett Cole and Heel out of there, and then you still look at them in totality, and Stanton out of there, and they've got a couple other injuries, but they still have a really good team. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
a lot of depth there, a lot of talent. Max Fried ends up being a great addition, obviously, especially with Cole going down. You still have an ace to pop right in there to go with the other guys. So I think as we sit here today, it could be a five-team race, and two or three make the playoffs, and it goes all season. It could also be a race that gets determined by what in-season moves teams make.
Right. Yeah, we don't know about Boston. They have just as good a chance of coming first as they do in last. That just seems to be kind of the pattern of the way that they've been going. Yankees lose some players, but they gain facial hair. What did you think of that? That's kind of that was
That was
kind
the
of like,
day.
oh, it happened. Huh? Wow.
Yeah, that was the day the Rays were there. That was the first day of spring training, and the kind of word came out like, "Hey, the Yankees have a big announcement, a press conference coming." You're like, "Oh, I wonder what this could be." And I was like, didn't have allowing facial hair on the bingo card, but I did see somebody in the Twitter universe or the X universe saying that they shouldn't. Once they did that, they suddenly started having a bunch of injuries, including Cole. So they messed with the George Steinbrenner karma by going against one of his wishes. So we'll see if that theory, the curse of the no facial hair, ends up getting some legs.
They didn't pray to Jobu right here, buddy. They didn't have any praying to Jobu like they
There
did
you
in the Major
go.
League movie. Marc Topkin, Tampa Bay Times, TB Times _Rays. Again, guys, I can't stress this enough. Support local, and especially during baseball season. Baseball is the heartbeat of America, day in, day out, night in, night out. Doesn't matter where the Rays are. Marc Topkin is usually there writing some incredible stories. He is there all the time, and it's not just the same old, same old. Here's the recap of the game. These are unbelievable stories, and I love just every little anecdote and all the different notes that Marc puts together to keep us abreast of the situation with the team. Nobody better, and in my mind, the best baseball writer in the country. Marc, appreciate your time. Get well, my friend. I hope you're there for opening day. Have a great rest of your week, buddy.
All right, buddy. Thank you, and thanks for all your kind words.
You got it, man. Anytime. Marc Topkin, Tampa Bay Times, Rays Insider. It's just do me a favor. Go out and go read other beat writers from around the country. Go check them out. Read it, and then come back and read Marc. You can't even compare it. I feel like sometimes I'm reading like a high school paper or a college paper. It's just very like standard, by the book, blah blah blah, this and that, bah, 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 bah. It's just like, okay. But when Marc writes a story, it's like, here's the angle, here's the vision, here's the other side of it. Oh, you think this guy is doing well because of this? Well, here's the reason why. And the great thing about when Marc is writing these stories is not only does he write the stories where you're like, maybe you didn't think about that, but also Marc writes the stories where it is something that is the hot topic of conversation. So Marc doesn't shy away from that. He wants to talk about, a player that's streaky or a player that's struggling or something that we can tell, like, what's off with this guy? Marc asks those tough questions, right? And sometimes, the players don't like it. That's just nature of the beast. I remember years ago, Drew Smiley was upset because Marc wrote something about him. But if you remember Drew Smiley's tenure with the Rays, like, it just, it wasn't all great. He came over here in the David Price deal, and listen, he dealt with some injuries. He was inconsistent, and I think Marc wrote as such. And Drew said something, kind of looked at Marc, and I was just like, oh shit! Like, we had this conversation with Bob Herrick yesterday. When you're a writer that's traveling, and when you're a writer that has to write these stories, and sometimes they're unflattering, but for the most part, the majority of the people that are journalists that are covering sports, it's not personal, man. It's not personal. They don't say anything or do anything that athletes can really say, like, that's a problem. That's legitimately an issue. So the stories that Marc writes, I thoroughly enjoy, even if it's just a recap of a game and it's a little bit more standard, but he doesn't really do that. So with baseball season fastly approaching, and I say fastly approaching like it's not going on right now, right? Spring training action, that is baseball. Tampa Bay Times checking out, and if you want to know what's going on with the Ray Stadium issue, Marc writes on that. John Romano, our friend Colleen Wright that joined us on the program the other day. We have Eddie Erlendsson. I put them together. I put the E's together for the first time ever. Eddie and Cena joins us tomorrow at 1:30. And of course, Rick Stroud, Joey Knight. With Joey Knight, we know that USF coming up this weekend with the game Friday night. You want to follow Joey Knight and everything that's going on with our Bulls. At Recher on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Go check me out there. Let's see. What else? All right. Just checking, just making sure everything's good. All right. Yeah, at Recher on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. All right. So if you missed the conversation that we had yesterday with Matt Matera from Pewter Report, I was actually on the Pewter Report podcast. Make sure you go check out those guys and like and subscribe to everything that they have going on. Scott Reynolds, Matt Matera, Josh Capo, Adam, Slavan, the whole crew over there. Go check them out and always show them a lot of love as well. Talking about support local. Those are the guys to support as well. But we had a conversation for a while at 4:00 yesterday about all the moves that the Buccaneers have made so far. Jason Light and his crew have done a really, really good job in free agency. making sure that they take care of the guys that have performed for them for a long time. But also, listen, it's one thing when you're talking about free agency and you're bringing it back players for their what they've done in the past. But I think that's where teams get in trouble. You can't operate out of sentiment. And I'm not out tomorrow, Dave Terry. I'll be in tomorrow. Friday, I'll be at the Valspar, so no show on Friday. But you can't operate out of free agency, out of sentiment. You can't bring a guy back just because of what he was able to do for you and be like, oh, this pie in the sky. Thank you for all that you've done. We're going to pay you for that. You can't. You can't. You got to pay guys for what they're going to do in the future. Now, does it factor into it how you do the business? I think some of the better organizations do operate like that. Maybe a little bit less cutthroat. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and we've seen that with Julian Breezeball and the Lightning. But I think if there is more of a bedside manner, if there is a little bit more of a tender, loving care operation, I think that helps you in the long run. And I'm going to give you an example why. For people that say, oh, it's a business, you got to be cutthroat, blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily think you get what happens with the Buccaneers with Chris Godwin and with Levante David and with Mike Evans and with guys taking less than their market value to stay in a place like Tampa Bay, to stay with the Buccaneers. When you know that the organization as a whole works together to make sure that Mike Evans gets that 1,000 yards, that has a lingering effect. That has a lasting impact on how people view the organization. Now, you could bitch and moan, oh, that wasn't good football, blah, blah, blah. You're just a curmudgeon and you're just negative as hell anyway. You're walking around life with a black cloud over your head. If you don't want to see good things happen to good people, like that says a lot more about you than it does about that good person. But when people look around at organizations and how they do business, and you look at a business, now it's the Lightning are different. A tough business decision with Steven Stamkos, but for the most part, everybody else knows that the Tampa Bay Lightning is a stand-up organization. They reward their guys. They have a fantastic owner, general manager, and a head coach that's respected around the league. Tough decisions are made. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about organizations time and time again that treat people and treat players just like absolute dog crap, and they can't get out of there fast enough. Get me out of here. Trade me. I don't want to be any part of this. That does affect you in free agency. That does affect you in contract negotiations. And look no further than the Bucs. When the Bucs operate like this, at this type of level, when you see that synchronicity, when you see that symbiosis between the entire front office, the coaching staff, and the players, that helps you in free agency. That helps you in contract negotiations. You think if it was like a pain in the ass to play here and it wasn't a family type atmosphere, you think Chris Godwin's going to leave that money on the table and not go to New England? Part of the reason why he stays here is because he sees how they've treated him and his family. He sees how they've treated Mike Evans, how they've treated Levante David, how they've treated Will Golston, how they've treated a lot of these other veterans. So when people have these discussions back and forth, when we're having talks about sweetheart deals and hometown discounts and things like that, that is a real thing. But it cannot be something that is a one-way street, and it can't be something that's just happens once in a while. You're either an organization or a franchise that is like that, or you're not. There's no gray area. It's black and white when it comes to things like that. Because if you have any type of hesitation, whether you're a good organization or not, you're not. You're not top tier. I think back to like the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Cuban was on a podcast, and I think he was talking to Matt Barnes up in smoke with those guys, and they were saying how much they loved playing in Dallas because the spread after the games was phenomenal for the visiting team. And he said something to the effect of that barbecue sauce. I still think about it to this day. And he goes, yeah, I did that. So if one day I was in negotiations with another player, he knew how he would be treated if he came to join Dallas. That's unbelievable foresight and thinking ahead. You don't just do nice things because you're going to get something later on, but it's just the right way to do business. Again, going back to the beginning, it doesn't mean you just reward a guy out of sentiment, but the way you go about your business goes a long way in retaining your players. So when there is hesitance about Hassan Reddick coming here, he's a malcontent. This is a guy that couldn't get along with New York. He held out. How is he going to fit in the Buccaneer locker room? You don't think he knows what this Buccaneers locker room is about? Hasn't Jason Light and Todd Bowles earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to bringing players here and adding them to a nucleus that doesn't fragment and fracture when things go bad? The last 2 years in the middle of the season, this team has gone in the shitter, and they bounced back both times and won the division. Think about that. They didn't just bounce back. They bounced back and won the division. I don't give a crap how bad the division is. You still got to be able to win it. You still got to win the games in front of you. You don't pick what division you're in at the beginning of every season. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You got to go out there and win it. And the fact that this team did not just absolutely crumble when things have gone south the last couple of seasons, right? It's one season you get. 2 seasons in a row? Yes, you could say it's a disturbing pattern. I sure as hell hope it doesn't happen here in year 3 and happen in the 3rd year in a row. But the fact that in that locker room there wasn't any, here we go again. I can't believe this is happening to us. Woe is me. Oh no, we suck again. There wasn't anything like that. Why? Because the leadership. So for all those people, and I want you to hearken back to this discussion that we had, and shout out to Matt Matera for showing me some love about this on the Pewter Report podcast yesterday. When everybody wanted to run Todd Bowles out of town and they wanted to promote Liam Cohen, and then you saw the way Liam Cohen went about his business before he went to Jacksonville, that is not the type of environment that you want to be a part of. That when you have to make tough decisions, you do it in a way like that, where you don't answer phone calls, you don't answer text messages, and you sneak behind people's backs. That's not the type of organization you want to be around. If that kind of shit happens in Tampa Bay, you think people would come here? Do you think people would want to stay here? They'd be heading for the hills at the drop of a hat. For even money, they'd be gone. How things have changed with the Buccaneers and the hierarchy in this organization and the way that it operates. So no, I'm not worried about Hassan Reddick. I'm not worried about how he's going to fit in here, because he knows coming into this locker room with the Vita Veas, with the Levante Davids of the world, like, there's no messing around here. There's no BS. He's coming here to try to win a championship. He's coming here, whether it's, and listen, is there some personal focus on trying to reestablish his market value and possibly get a long-term deal? Maybe. That's his prerogative. As a professional athlete, go get paid. But is anybody really going to care if Hassan Reddick signs a 3-year deal for $65 million with Seattle next year? If he helps the Buccaneers win another Super Bowl, nobody's going to give 2 shits. Nobody is going to care. Not one bit. Is he going to come here and get on board and be a model of a teammate? My money is overwhelmingly yes. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on is the news that came out in the 4:00 hour yesterday, and that the Buccaneers are going to bring back Bryce Hall as another cornerback in that room. So shout out to Rick Stroud for announcing this. Again, another member of the Tampa Bay Times, another reason why you want to subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. But this news broke yesterday when I was having a discussion with Matt Matera. Bryce Hall brought back as a corner to play behind Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean. He got hurt in game 1 last year, so we really didn't see what he brought to the table. But we know from his time with the Jets he can play, and he's a good guy to have in the locker room, and it's just nothing he's going to see on Sundays that he hasn't seen before. But with that being said, the signing of Bryce Hall is not the same when it comes to the signing of Hassan Reddick for me, because you're signing a guy that's a middle of the pack 3-4 corner rather than Hassan Reddick, who's going to come in automatically and be your number 1 pass rusher. I don't think that this precludes the Buccaneers from selecting a corner in the upcoming NFL draft. Not one bit. I do think that bringing in Hassan Reddick and the Buccaneers feeling that Reddick and a guy like Yaya Diaby are going to be your starters next year, I think that gives them maybe a little bit of pause from drafting another defensive end or outside linebacker, pass rusher. Also because you have Chris Braswell. You have a guy that's been in the system here with Todd Bowles. He was a high second-round pick. You're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. So at the very least, you're going to draft a first-round pass rusher at 19, or like I said yesterday, I think you should trade back and then have him behind Chris Braswell on the depth chart. I don't think that makes sense. If Jahad Campbell's there from Alabama, you're inside linebacker, and you can pair him up with Levante David as the heart of that defense, no issues with that whatsoever. But a name that I said on the program yesterday here and also on the program yesterday with Matt Matera, if Will Johnson from Michigan falls, I'm taking Will Johnson. I'm taking him right off the rip. He's your CB3 to start the season. He'll be that guy that will take over for Jamel when he gets banged up, or if he just proves to be a better player, then he'll usurp him and he'll be the number one guy and he'll play opposite of Zion McCollum. I have no issue with that. I think it would be a lot easier path for him to be able to get on the field if he gets drafted than if he gets drafted in the first round, then if it's a guy like Ezeraku or James Pierce or Mike Green. Jihad Campbell, again, we're keeping him out of the discussion. He's going to start day one inside linebacker position if he goes at 19. Same thing like we saw with Kalijah Cansey. Same thing like we saw with Graham Barton. That's a guy, it's a plug and play. I would still implore them to go get another inside linebacker. As an undrafted free agent, we've seen some success there. And let's not forget we have Servasi Dennis. I don't trust him as a top 2 inside linebacker because of the injuries. It's not because of his play. Hell, if it was his play, then maybe we don't worry so much about drafting Jahad Campbell in the first round. But Servasi Dennis has to prove that he can stay on the field. So does Jamel Dean. It's more than just your ability. It's your availability. We know that's the most important one. I'm very intrigued by what the Buccaneers do with that 19 selection. Every single team in the first round has their own pick. I don't think it's going to be like that once the draft starts. I do think there's going to be trades. There's going to be ups and downs. And I do think that the Buccaneers should be one of those teams if they start seeing it. If they start seeing those big names, if they start seeing those sexy positions get drafted, I think they should really think about trading down. Unless Will Johnson's there. If Will Johnson's there at 19 or Campbell's there at 19, okay. Maybe you go get those guys, right? But if you see the first round of the NFL draft and you see a team draft Jackson Dart in the top 15, if you see 2 running backs, if Hampton goes as well, then I'm looking at the Buccaneers going, go get you some assets. Go get you some assets. You're still going to be able to get the guy you want in the first rounds. Get an extra second, get an extra third. Think about that. Even just trading back sometimes one selection, right? Let's say somebody wants a Jackson Dart at 19. Let's somebody wants a Hampton at 19, or there's another position where a guy falls, right? Let's say a Shamar Stewart falls to 19 and somebody really wants him. And the Bucs go, all right, we'll trade back to 20 or 21. Just give us another 2 3s or something like that, or something crazy like that. Jason Light is always open for business. That's what I love to see when it comes to draft time. And that's something that Jason Light, we always look at players initially at their improvement year over year. I don't think enough is made over how coaches and front office members improve as well. We just automatically think when they come into the league, they're either a great coach or a great GM, and then that's it, right? Or they learn under this guy, they finally become the main dude, and then they make, they're either that guy that does a great job or they suck. There's no middle ground. But I think you look at Todd Bowles and Jason Light as evidence that these guys have gotten better. Todd is a much better head coach now than he was with the Jets. I'm putting my hand up. I was one of the most worried people here in the Bay Area. I remember when they spoke about Todd getting promoted, and I was one of the biggest proponents. And I know, looking at Aaron Jacobson and Tom Krasnicki on DAE, two guys that grew up as Jets fans. They understood. They saw how bad it was. Half of my family are Jets fans. I remember watching those games. Futile down the stretch, just awful. I was wondering if this guy would ever coach or ever be a head coach in the league ever again, ever. And I was not willing to say that I trusted that he was the right choice, but he's gotten better. Now, will I say he's a top 5 coach in the league? No. But I don't think you need to be a top 5 coach in the league to win a Super Bowl. Does anybody think that Nick Sirianni's a top 5 coach in the league? Maybe. But he took his team to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and everybody wanted to get rid of him. Now everybody changed. Like, do people really love him? Is Nick Sirianni better than both Harbaughs? Is he better than Tomlin? Is he better than Reed? Right? I don't know. I don't think so. But he won a Super Bowl. Construct your roster correctly. Be a good leader of men. I think Todd Bowles is in that category. He's gotten better. There's no way that you can tell me, especially if you saw him with the Jets. I'd love to ask this question to Aaron or T-Kraz. Do you think Todd Bowles has gotten better as a head coach from his time with the Jets to his time with the Celtics? I went green to green. Jets to the Bucks. And if you do, how much? A little bit, a lot of it, a lottle. I like that's in the middle. The lottle. I think he's gotten fairly better. I don't want to say a little. I don't know if it was a lot because I don't think he was. You're not awful. It wasn't Brandon Staley. We didn't make 1 year. That defense is dangerous. He obviously won one as a DC, but we're just talking strictly as a head coach. I think he's learned and adjusted. Same thing with Jason Light. And I know that there's people to the end of time that are going to look at Jason Light and say, I can't believe Aguayo this and JTS this and Trask this and all this jazz. I get that, right? But he certainly improved. He was certainly part of that group that brought Tom Brady in here. He constructed the roster. Let's go back to that, okay? Everybody talks about how Jason Light and Bruce Arians and that relationship helped bring Tom Brady here. Let's not forget the reason why Tom Brady came here was because he looked at the roster and thought that roster is good enough if I go there to win a championship. He was right. Who constructed that roster? Jason Light. Not enough people bring that up when we're talking about Tom Brady and his decision to come here. Everybody always discusses about their relationship, the New England connection, Tom's connection with Bruce Arians and knowing that he's worked with other quarterbacks before, the Carson Palmers, Peyton Mannings, and the like. But let's not forget the job that Jason Light did constructing that roster. He made it sexy enough that Tom Brady looked at it and said, there's the spot. That's where I'm going to go. That's where my second marriage is going to happen. That's where I'm going to win my 7th championship. Look at what Jason Light was able to do in the draft that year. Bringing in Tristan Wirfs, bringing in Antoine Winfield Jr. He drafted Bucky Irving, Graham Barton, Luke Gedeke, right? I mean, think about it. You brought in Luke Gedeke, a guy went from one side of the line to the next. He went from guard to tackle. Now he's one of the best right tackles in the league. He had the idea that Baker Mayfield, in the right surroundings, in the right environment, would flourish and be able to lead this team. Think about that decision. I thought that Jacoby Brissett was the right answer because if he was the starter, he was the backup. No issue whatsoever. We didn't know about Baker Mayfield. We didn't know how he was going to be. We didn't know if he was going to beat out Kyle Trask, if he was going to be the clear-cut number one. But Jason Light looked at Baker Mayfield and said, okay, well, bring him here. Bring him here in the right scenario. I think he can thrive. I think he can flourish. Think about the balls that it took to make that move, knowing that you have people inside of that locker room that knows what a championship team looks like. That could have blown up in his face now. If Baker Mayfield pooped the bed, if he was terrible, let's say his personality didn't mesh with some of these guys, there's a really good chance that Mike Evans is no longer here. Chris Godwin's no longer here. Levante David's like, I'm good. You're not getting some of these free agents. So these decisions that Jason Light has made shows that there's growth. Coaches do get better. General managers do get better. And I know we're going to talk some Lightning here in a bit with Erik Erlendsson of lightninginsider.com, but we had Brian Engblom from FanDuel Sports Network on a couple of weeks ago. And I said, my favorite book, 3 Nights in August, Tony La Russa, speaking about him being the manager of the Cardinals, said that every coach is one of 3 things. He's either a master tactician, like a unbelievable tactician, a master psychologist, or a riverboat gambler. And the greatest coaches are all 3. And I've always thought that, obviously, with not having a hockey playing background, that the big thing that really set Coop apart from everybody else was that he was kind of that psychologist. He knew when to push, knew when to pull. He knew how to motivate guys when it seemed like there was a need for motivation. But Brian Engblom said, yeah, but Jay, he's become a really good tactician, and he knows when to gamble too. He knows when to sit guys on the bench. He knows when to put those lines in a blender. So a guy that came into the league and got that gig with the Bolts because of that psychology, because of the way he can motivate players, and of course it helps to win at the lower levels too, but he's really developed those other 3 things. So even John Cooper, who had success at the lower levels of hockey, he is a much better coach now than he was then, and he's got 2 Stanley Cups to show for it. All right, let's bring him in. Our pal, lightninginsider.com, the one and only Erik Erlendsson. I like that hoodie, buddy.
USF, baby.
All day, every day. Go Bulls. I know you were sharing what I had to say. I wanted to get your opinion on that because I thought it was very interesting when I was bringing that up to Brian, because I was asking, this was a couple of weeks ago, about the growth of John Cooper. What have you seen? Because obviously you've been here longer than he has, but what's the greatest growth that you've seen in him as a head coach, going from a guy that really had some success in the minors, but now is going to go down as maybe one of the best coaches in hockey history and a certain Hall of Famer?
Probably his understanding of bench management, right? And why and how that matters. I mean, look, they have great players. They've had great players since he's been here, but you do have to know how to utilize them, put them in the best positions to succeed. And I think that he's learned that as he's come along, because, if you think about it, it was a little bit of a rapid rise for John in some ways, right? I mean, but he did pick up things every step along the way. You're going all the way back to the Texarkana days and even the Little Caesars days and, youth hockey in Michigan and, to the Green Bay Gamblers and to Norfolk. You think about the steps that he's made along the way. He always had instant success, right? And in some ways, he had that here. His first full year, the team made the playoffs, got swept, and by year 2, he's in the Stanley Cup final. So it was a rapid rise in terms of, the success that he had. But I think he's been able to become much, much better in everything he does because of all those experiences that he's had to learn how to use his players. And you mentioned it. We know that his greatest strength has always been player management. And that's, I think, an important part of any coach at any sport nowadays. You can't just be a coach. You have to be a player manager as well. And I think he's one of the best at it. But he has learned to be a better a guy who manages his bench in games, right? We're seeing this year in particular, like what sticks out to me is how many times have we seen Luke Glendening thrown out in situations where he wouldn't be out there, but because he's such a good face-off guy,
right?
To put him out there. I don't know if Coop would have done that earlier in his career. I think what you're finding as he's learned through his career is that those small moments could lead to something big. And, the win they had in Nashville the day after Thanksgiving on Black Friday was that type of a thing. It was a power play in overtime, and he sent Glendening out for the faceoff. They won the faceoff. 5 seconds later, puck's in the back of the net. They win the game and pick up, at that time, that was 2 important points. So I think that's a big part of how he has evolved as a coach, is understanding how to deal with those situations and manage his bench a lot better. And look, you can't help but become better at X's and O's especially with some of the people he's had around. I mean, all those years he spent with Rick Bowness. I mean, Rick Bowness he's Mr. Hockey. He's been around the game for 50 years at a high level. So you are definitely going to pick up on. But I think for me, in watching him, I think it's the way he manages his bench in game.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this too before we got back to the Lightning. I had Marc Topkin on before, and people always ask me about the importance of being on site to cover these games, right? And you know, you've done it both, right? You were traveling with the team there for a while with the Trib. You know, you cover the games at home too. We've traveled together and covered playoff games. So, what type of insight do you get from being there every day that you couldn't get from home? Because I guess people would ask me, and maybe it's a little bit different when you're a journalist, when you're a writer, than somebody that was in the radio and podcast field like myself. But people would ask me, Jay, why do you go to the games all the time? And does it really make that much of a difference? Can you do your job without going to the games? And, you know, this kind of goes into like the Stephen A. LeBron thing, where Stephen A. would say, well, I don't need to go to the games, but to talk about you, I can do that from here. But I think there's something like you get a little bit, and I'm not just talking about like one-on-one conversations, because I think that's like, obviously you get one-on-one conversations from going there, but there's just something different about being at the games and at practices and around the arena. Could you speak to some of that just kind of randomness and just intangible stuff by being around there, and how that can help you do your job better than if you were just kind of watching every single game at home on your couch?
How long is this podcast? There are so many benefits to being there in person. First of all, when you just watch stuff on TV, all you see is what the TV shows you. Right. Especially in hockey, like just from watching a game standpoint. I mean, how many times have we, I don't know, seen a guy take a puck off of a boot, right? And then you watch, okay, is he staying on the bench? Oh no, he's going down the tunnel. You know, you might not get that on TV. And that's just a small thing.
Oh, and let me cut you up. That becomes one of the funnest things in the press box, when it's me, Eric, and Ed, and the Chief is next to us, and then all of a sudden we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We start counting heads, and we start looking at the tunnel. The guy walking down, we see Mikey Poirier walking down and walking back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So like, it's so funny how 3 grown men all of a sudden just start putting their counting fingers on. So I think they're a guy short. Oh wait, there's a guy in the box. Oh wait, there's it's crazy. It's hilarious. Yeah.
So you know, you're probably not going to have an opportunity to get that like watching just on television. For me though, like you can never get a feel for a game unless you're at the game. Like you can't. You know, the tone of what's going on. It's like one of the reasons I love talking to Brian Engblom sometimes is because he gets that on ice vantage point, right? He's down there between the benches and he has a much different feel for the game, but you still have to be at the game to have a feel for it. And that's even upstairs. And even from just sort of tactically looking at games, you know, from where we sit up in the press box, you have a view of the entire ice. So you can kind of see stuff that, again, is not showing up on a camera that's going on behind the play, you know, whether it's, you know, their defensive zone setup or anything like that. So number one, you get a much better feel for the game when you're there actually seeing it with your own eyes and not viewing it through a lens. But for me, the biggest thing always has been and always will be the opportunity to be in the room, to speak to players, to speak to coaches, ask your questions, and then you get insight into the game. We can talk strategies and X's and O's, and those are not the difficult parts of figuring this out. But when you get into the mindset of a player, what'd you see here? What'd you think here? What'd you feel here? You know, you get it from their perspective. That helps you become somebody who better understands what it is you're watching, and you connect the two. And then on top of that, you build a little bit of a rapport with the players. They get to know you. They get to see your questions. They see how you operate and how you work. And then especially shoes. You know, and it just gives you, because then there's a bit of a trust built up, because there is more of a barrier, especially nowadays, between media and players than there ever has been in the history of sports, right? There's so much out there that players have to be wary of when dealing with us in the media. So I think them getting to know you, not necessarily on a personal basis, there's some of that, but get to know how you go about your work and your job and what it is you do. You might get much, much better information and insight from a guy who kind of gives you a little bit of trust that you're not going to take something and turn it into a headline that's going to make them look bad. And I think that helps everybody, right? Mm-hmm. That helps us, because I think the one thing that gets lost in today's media is, in a lot of ways, we are the conduit between fans and teams and players, right? If we're asking questions, there's a good chance the fans want to know the answers. Right. So it benefits everybody when there is more media around that can kind of build up that trust and rapport with the players, so that fans, ultimately we're there to serve the fans, get a better insight into what it is they're watching that goes beyond just the scores, who scored a goal, what was the final score, where are they in the standings. There's just so much more insight that you can get from being at games that you can't get. And look, I cover every game. Half of them are on the road, half of them are at home, right? There's a big difference. There's times where, man, I wish I was on the road, because there's questions that I want to ask from a game that I can't ask. Right. So I can't get that kind of insight because I'm not there to ask those questions. That's not a knock on anybody else. That's just from my own selfish standpoint. You know, so I miss that aspect of being able to do this job in person, embedded basically with the team. And I think that benefits readers, listeners, everybody, that we can get those insight because we're around them all the time.
I don't know if you saw, but Gary Bettman spoke today, and he said that, no, I'm not changing the playoff format. And I was like, God dang it. We were just talking to Coop about this. It's going to come down to the wire here in the Atlantic E when you're looking at these three teams with the Bolts and the Leafs and the Panthers. And it starts obviously tomorrow night. This is kind of a tricky 3-game stretch, isn't it? I mean, you go play Dallas. These games could either be really tight checking against Dallas, or Dallas just takes off. And this has been such a weird visit for the Bolts over the years. You have to be on your P's and Q's early, or it can get out of hand. And then you have that double dip with Utah and Vegas. I think if they want to have any chance to really stay in the hunt here in the Atlantic, they got to win 2 of 3. What do you make of these next couple of games?
I think it's a fair assessment if they want to stay in contention. I mean, Florida's opened the door, right? Yeah. They blew that third period lead against the Bruins last week. They blew a 2-goal lead against the Islanders the other night and lost both those games of regulation. And the thing is, too, you know, to kind of show the importance of getting the points on this trip, the Panthers and Leafs still have 2 more head-to-head matchups against each other. Right. One of those 2 teams is guaranteed 2 points out of those games, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of also what you're chasing here. So it's a 2-point gap with 1 game in hand, and one the Lightning and Panthers have 1 more head-to-head. The Lightning and Leafs have 1 more head-to-head. So there's still 2 matchups between these 2 teams. But if you start to, you know, if you go on a streak, just like even last week, they go 0-1-2 or 0-2-1, yeah, and you only pick up, you know, 1 point here or there, you know, it could be the difference, you know, at this point. And, you know, we've talked about the importance of, you know, where you finish, I think, in the standings this year compared to maybe other years where I think home ice matters more for Tampa Bay this year. You know, and then if you finish first in the division, you're getting number 2 wild card. It looks like that's going to be Ottawa, you know, the way things are trending. But, you know, you get that on home ice, and, you know, I think that matters a lot. So I'm with you. It's a tricky trip. Dallas, I think, has won 7 straight at home, right? So they're playing, you know, pretty well. They had to come back last night against the Ducks to win that game in overtime. Utah, they got punked by Edmonton 7-1. So you know, they have another game tomorrow night. We'll see what they kind of have in the tank as they try and chase a playoff spot. And Vegas has been a difficult place to go and play, and it's going to be the second half of a back-to-back, and we'll see which start Johansson gets, whether it's Saturday or whether it's Sunday in this back-to-back situation. But yeah, I think you need to look at it realistically as 4 points needs to kind of keep you in the conversation for the top seed in the Atlantic Division. I'm with you there.
If they win the first game against Dallas, do you think that impacts who plays that first game of the back-to-back?
Nope.
Or is it already planned out?
I think it's already planned out. They won't tell us.
No, of course not.
John Cooper will never tell us, but I think it's already mapped out. And I wouldn't be surprised if Johansson gets Saturday's game in Utah.
No chance Vasi plays both, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he did it obviously in February, but that was with the break coming up.
Yeah.
And Johansson was hurt. Their backup at that time was Brandon Halverson. So I would not expect that Vasi would start both. I'm pretty sure Johansson's going to get one of them, just like Johansson started the game last week in Philadelphia. You can't let him sit for too long. And this is the last back-to-back coming up on the season. And actually, once you get past this weekend, other than the 30th and the 31st, it's every other day for the rest of the regular season. So that leads all the way up to the 17th of April. So, I think it's pre-planned out. I think they probably have it mapped out for the most part the rest of the season.
E, what can you tell us from practice today as far as the lines? And, have we seen enough from a guy like Oliver Bjorkstrand? I mean, we probably got to wait the standard 10 games like we have to wait for everybody. But I think Yanni's been, as advertised. I still think Ollie's trying to find his way. What can you tell us from practice and how the lines were looking and your initial takeaways from Oliver Bjorkstrand with the Bolts?
Yeah, so it looks like same lines as they've been running, right? With Kucherov playing with Hagel and Cirelli the last couple of games, and Yanni Gourde playing with Point and Gensel. That's kind of the way it's been. Third line has been Paul, Gonsalves, and Bjorkstrand. Still waiting to see when and if we get Cirelli, Hagel, Bjorkstrand. I think that was probably the thought process when they made that trade. Haven't seen it yet outside of practice. Defensive pairings all the same. So everybody was there. That was the good thing that nobody missed practice today after a day off yesterday. So everybody should be good to go starting tomorrow in Dallas. As far as Bjorkstrand, some guys just take a little bit longer to adjust, right? And this is a new situation for him. He's in season trade. The only other time he was moved was in the summer. So he's trying to just find some of the nuances and fit in. It's, as easy as tight and sometimes as tight as that locker room is, like Bjorkstrand's the outsider, right?
Yeah.
Yanni Gourde's not. He knows most of those players in that room in some capacity and played with a good portion of them. So, he's not an outsider coming in. He's a former guy coming back.
Right.
So Bjorkstrand is still kind of the outsider. And he's got certainly a big ally in Gourde with him. And, he's certainly got a really good personality. But, when I wrote the story last week about the importance of chemistry and when new guys get traded in, trying to make them feel as welcome as possible when they come in, like Brandon Hagel was great talking on this subject because he went through it. His first time he'd ever been traded in any capacity in his life. He knew nobody in that.
Do you remember that day? Do you remember that day? I don't know why, out of all the things I've done in the last decade, watching him that day in locker room B in there, he looked so disheveled and so I don't know what the hell just happened. And I felt so bad asking this guy about hockey when he had his whole world just got flipped upside down. It's just it burned in my brain.
Yep. And the one thing he said that really stood out to me, he said, the hockey community is a small community, and he still didn't know anybody in that room. In any capacity, never played with anybody, never worked out with anybody, nothing. So it was completely new. So, when your life gets turned upside down, certainly you're here to do a job, but he struggled to make that adaptation, right, to a completely new situation for him. And, he was very insightful in how all of that works and trying to develop chemistry with a new team and new teammates. And he said, sometimes you have to have off ice situations to really, and this is the one thing that really caught me too, was he said hockey players by nature don't want to step on anybody's toes. So in a locker room situation, they might be more hesitant to maybe speak up, to ask a question, whatever it is, to anybody, right? That's just the nature of the sport. He said sometimes you need the off-ice stuff. You go out to dinner, maybe you have a couple drinks at a bar on the road, something like that, that kind of helps with it. So you kind of even get some insight into how all that takes place. And, they've only had the one road trip really since the trade was made. This will be another opportunity here, with a couple of days off, including a new experience going to Salt Lake City for a hockey game for these players. Although I guess Bjorkstrand and Gord have probably already been there.
They played there, right?
Yeah. But for the rest of the team, it'll be new. So it'll be a shared experience in that aspect. So it just does sometimes take guys a little bit longer to kind of figure out where they fit in the new hierarchy, right? You went from a very familiar setting where he'd been for a couple of years to now coming on a team that has expectations. That Seattle team, I know they made the playoffs that one year, but there's no expectations other than trying to live up to Vegas, the standards that Vegas set as an expansion team. They didn't have those type of pressures. So now he comes into a team in a locker room that has Stanley Cup aspirations and has had a great season, is one of the top teams in the league, especially in the second half of the season. So it just sometimes it'll click with him, though. I really think it'll click with him. He's going to figure it out. I know that 10-game marker is sort of the standard we kind of set aside and see where they sit after 10 games. Obviously, he's not there yet. And again, this is not a one-year investment. This is not a 20-game investment. He's under contract for next year. But I have full confidence that Oliver Bjorkstrand is going to be a big part of whatever it is this team does this year once you get to the postseason.
Team is at the airport right now, ready to take off for Dallas. So really good that they were able to get some time here at the house.
Good practice today, though. It was a good practice today. Like,
were you there?
Yeah. It was out. It was out in Brandon, so right down the street from my house. It's even better.
Nice.
But I mean, like the one thing that Coop talked about today too. You look at the way they played in Boston on Saturday, and one of the best periods I've ever seen a team play when you out-attempt a team 42-3. He talked about how they had a good practice the day before. They didn't practice the day before Philadelphia. They actually flew back from Boston on Sunday and played that game. Well, today they had wasn't quite as hard as an intense practice as it was in Boston on Friday, but it was, for a fly-out day, they went about an hour, 15 hour and 20 minutes on the ice, which is a little bit long. To be on the ice before you. So good practice. Hopefully you can't expect a performance like you had in Boston, once again, but hopefully that's kind of something that spurs them, for tomorrow's game against Dallas.
Before I let you go, how about the performances from the guys involved with the Four Nations? Have you noticed any trickle-down effect? We've seen them taking some off days, right? Optional reports to the rink kind of things. Like, how do you think that they've adjusted, and have you seen any after effects?
I think you look at a lot of the guys around the league. I think a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Connor McDavid had a tough time, when he came back with Edmonton. Matthew Tkachuk obviously is injured. Right. Brady Tkachuk, I think he might be the exception. He's kind of really led the charge for Ottawa here since they came back. But specifically with the Lightning, Braden Point does not look as explosive with his skating as we're used to seeing. He's not attacking with the puck that we're used to seeing from him. I don't know if that's a reaction to that. Brandon Hagel had some good results. Like, he scored a couple of big goals coming out of the break. You think of some of the shots that he had, and but you haven't seen the same type of energy, so to speak, the same like his goal celebrations. Like, even his goal celebrations by his standards are tame. Right. Like, he's a guy who plays with such emotion on his sleeve, and we haven't seen that eruption of emotion from him. And look, he talked about it. It was difficult going from the emotion of those 2 weeks to come back and have to play NHL games. Not that there's not emotion in it, but it hasn't been the same. It was nice to see Cirelli get on the scoreboard there in Boston with a couple of goals. That's going to help him. Jay Gensel. Look, he snapped at the linesman the other night. He's such an easygoing guy. I don't know exactly, but obviously you could see from watching the replay that
got penalized for it.
He turned back as soon as the face-off happened and just immediately got on the linesman case. So, and that's not something he's a steady, unassuming, quiet personality, quiet on the ice in terms of the way he plays. He obviously scores big goals, but so for him to erupt with that kind of emotion was a little out of character for him. So I know that certainly that's been some of the talk of some of these guys coming out of the Four Nations. That's why, playing these type of tournaments in season are tricky, right? They're very tricky. We loved it. It was great entertainment. It was great theater in all of those games, but it does take an emotional drain. I don't think physically that tournament was a big deal for these players because most of them only played 3 and only a few of them played 4, right? It's in 2 weeks. So it's not like it was, a jam-packed schedule. So I think the emotional level, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get that back. But, I think once we hit April on the calendar, I think you need to start seeing more of that from some of those guys that were in the Four Nations. You need that emotion at a time that's very emotional for teams. So,
What do you got up on lightninginsider.com right now, buddy?
Obviously the recap from the game the other night, working on a couple of things, the playoff format, that's something that I've kind of talked to some guys about. And while Gary Bettman might not have an appetite to change it, I think there's a growing sense
everybody
from inside the
else
league, from the players and coaches and everything else who are a little bit, over this situation and have a thought process to go back to a more 1 through 8 as a more fair, quote unquote, fair seeding situation. So working on that a little bit. And I don't know when I'm going to be able to get that up, but that is something that's brewing in the back of my mind. It'll be up on the site at some time. I don't know, soon.
lightninginsider.com. Use that promo code JNZ. Get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring one after that. Yeah, I wonder what I was gonna say. I was gonna say Sheldon Keefe. He ain't there no more. Craig Brubake's probably not the best person to ask, but I think Paul Maurice would be interesting to see what he has to say too, right? Like, because I'm sure they're in that same situation. Like, damn, bro, we're gonna have to play the Lightning in the first round again.
Yeah.
Like, no, who wants to sign up for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been good for the state of Florida to get these teams facing off in the playoffs, but I'm over it.
Yeah,
I'm over it. I'm over seeing the same 2 teams in the postseason. Because I just don't think it drums up enough interest. Because at that point, especially with this one, it becomes geographical, right? Is the rest of the league paying attention to Florida and Tampa Bay? Sure, they're 2 of the best teams, but they're still 2 of the smaller markets. So is the rest of the NHL community going to focus in on that matchup over, say, whoever Edmonton is playing?
right.
So I'm over the format. I'd like to see it go back to 1 to 8.
I'm with you, buddy. Lightninginsider.com. Again, use that promo code JNZ. Follow him on Twitter /X. Erik _Erlendsson. That's a K, not a C. 2 S's after the D. E. Appreciate it, brother. Have a great weekend. Talk to you next Wednesday.
All right. Be well.
Thanks, pal. ErikErlendsson.com. Support local, man. Telling you, that's another great thing to get somebody as a gift as we get closer and closer to the postseason. Lightning Insider, he's going to be all over it. And I'm going to take his answer. I'm going to take Topkin's answer. I'm going to put it together because I think it makes a lot of sense. People have asked me for a very long time, like, why do you go to the games? What's so important? What kind of insight do you glean going to these contests? Like, it doesn't matter. Is it that much of a difference? It really is to me. I don't really think that I can do what I do if I don't go to the games. Maybe not all of them, but the majority of them. It is super important to be able to go there. And also because, if you ask somebody in the organization, like, hey, can we get this guy in the show? Or can you help me with this guy for an interview there at the arena that day? Like, they're more apt to help out the people that are doing and distributing content because they're putting in that effort, right? Like, everybody knew I didn't get paid extra going to the games. I went to the games because I thought it helped me do my job better for DAE. Now, does that mean that you can't do your job without doing it? In my mind, I may be different than everybody else. That's fine. But that's the way that I know how to do my job, by going there. And when I listen to Marc Topkin, when I listen to Erik Erlendsson, when I listen to Ed Encina and Rick Stroud and all these different guys, and they tell me, yeah, Jay, the things that you get from being there in person, on hand, I mean, it's indescribable. It's not the same. It's not the same. So really, really good responses from Marc Topkin and Erik Erlendsson. We're going to post both of those interviews individually like we always do, but I want to put those two answers side by side because that is a question a lot of people want to know. What do you get from covering games in person as opposed to doing it at home? Because there's so many different people with podcasts and so many different people that are on their phone or on their computer that tweet out their opinions, and that's fine. You're entitled to do that. But if you're on hand, if you're at the games, it just gives you a completely different insight. I feel like you get a grand scope. You get 100% of the experience, and you're getting a viewpoint and a perspective that people aren't getting at home. All right, let's switch it up. Let's finish off the show with, man, the hair's looking good. Ollie's in the house.
Thanks, man.
Ollie Bassett right here from the Rowdies joining us on the program. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining. The hair's looking stylish. I like it. Me and you kind of got the same idea.
Yeah, we've got something going on.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Something similar.
We're doing it. So how's the adjustment, man, coming from, playing there in Canada, obviously Northern Ireland, but you're here in the Tampa Bay area. What's kind of been your initial reaction to being able to play here in the Sunshine State?
No, I've settled in really quickly, to be fair. I came in like 2 weeks before preseason started just to train a little bit and get familiar with the area and meet some of the other guys that were here during the off season. And then, when preseason started, I felt like I'd settled in really quickly, and yeah, I've enjoyed, every minute since I arrived here so far.
Ollie, what's it been like going to a team, and I call them kind of the core four guys that have been here seemingly forever, with Forrest and Leo and Lewis, and having a guy like Aaron there as the captain. How great is it to be able to go to a place like the Rowdies and knowing you got four guys that have been here for a while, and if you have any questions, they'll be able to answer them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, in any club and any organization that you have guys that have been there a while, and I've said before, they're the guys that set the standard in training and make you aware of, what's expected, day in, day out. So, yeah, I think for me, it's been good to come into a group like that. And, they've helped me a lot. And, they've obviously made me feel welcome on and off the pitch. So I think obviously they're four great players, but they're four really good people as well. So they helped me settle in, really quickly. And, yeah, it's just been a group that's been, it's quite a tight-knit group. And it's been really easy just to come in and just be myself.
Rowdies midfielder Ollie Bassett joining us here on the program. And listen, I've watched both of the games. You'll see me a lot at the home games there at Al Lang Stadium. I feel like you guys have played well enough to get some points here. How frustrating is it after two games to know that, man, we probably should have gotten more? How do you kind of balance that out of knowing you got to be more? Of course, got to find the back of the net more, but the process seems to be kind of you're on the right path to playing the right way to win games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to put the ball in the back of the net at the end of the day. That's how you win games. But I think our overall performance, especially in the first game, I think at Vegas, I thought we actually played really well. We dominated that game. And I think in the second half, it was kind of just wave after wave of attack. And obviously we conceded just a goal that you probably won't see too many of them this season. So it's just a mistake from our part. But I think both games we've played well. We've given away two goals that were probably, we'd like back. We could probably do better on both of them occasions. But, I think we're moving the ball well. We just have to, keep creating the chances that we're creating. And then, inevitably with the players we have, we'll start putting the ball in the back of the net. But, yeah, I think it's been positive so far. And obviously the results haven't gone our way. But, I think we probably deserved a little bit more out of both the games.
What have the guys told you, or even other people within the organization, about playing at Al Lang? We know you got a couple of more games on the road before you play there. Right on the water. Have you seen it? Have you been there yet?
I don't think I've been down that area. Obviously, not been onto the field or in the locker room or anything like that. I've seen it from the outside. But from what I've heard, everyone says that it's a really nice stadium. Obviously the pitch is immaculate, which is going to suit the way we want to play in terms of moving the ball and being on the ball. So yeah, I've heard really good things about what it's like to play there. So I'm obviously excited just to be able to experience that on the first home game. Yeah,
you're gonna love it, man, especially on the water there with the breeze. It really is. And watching the USL over the years, you look at some of the pitches, and then you look at what you guys have at Outlang. You're gonna love it, man. I can't wait for you to experience that. When you're playing your best, when you're at the top of your game, what are you like out there on the pitch? Is it more of a creation type of thing for other people? Is it more of you finding the back of the net? Like when you feel like, hey, I'm at my best, I got my A game. What does Ollie Bassett's game look like?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I think, obviously scoring goals, I want to contribute as many goals as I can from midfield, from the edge of the box and outside the area. But then it's also, I want to create as many like good chances for my teammates and put my teammates in good positions to score. And obviously I think I'm at my best, obviously, when I'm playing a bit higher up the field, kind of in the final third, maybe behind a striker or playing, with another number 10, just players that I can combine with and kind of see the game the same way as I do. And yeah, I think just getting on the ball and, when I'm confident and, when I feel like I'm, playing well, then, that's when I kind of perform the best.
Ollie, I'm a guy that has really tried to help grow soccer here in the Tampa Bay area. Whether it was when I was with the radio or here on the podcast, you see, I got the scarf here. Been a Man U guy my entire life. My great grandparents are from Manchester. And one of the things that people have asked me is like, what's this whole promotion relegation thing? And now the announcement comes out today. We don't have to get into the specifics of it, but just kind of the broad overview to the people that don't know, even from like European soccer and the promotion and relegation really is something where it's not just the teams at the top, it's the teams at the bottoms. I mean, I think some of the best celebrations I've ever seen were teams that stave off relegation. I mean, how does that add a level of importance to the leagues when you have promotion and relegation?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read too much into about what's going to happen, over here. But obviously, being from the UK, it's obviously growing up. It's obviously normal to have promotion and relegation, and I think it just adds. I think every single game, then, regardless of where you are in the table, obviously means something. Maybe towards the end of the season, if you're like 10 games away from the end of the season and you've got nothing to play for, and you're like near the bottom, but you know that you can't get relegated, then it's kind of like, okay, well, we have nothing really to play for you now, So
right.
I think it just adds an extra element of excitement. Every game obviously is extremely valuable. 3 points are valuable. And then you'll see towards the back end of the season, teams that are near the top will drop points to teams that are near the bottom, like trying to stay in the league. So I think it's obviously going to be a big step forward for American, soccer in general. I don't know if it's been something that's been, a long time coming, but I think it's certainly, the standard way, how it is in Europe. And yeah, it's something that I've grown up, my whole life with. So it's not something that's new to me, but I think the element of excitement and just kind of every game, being extremely valuable is something that is going to be, important moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. I think it makes a lot of sense. And you never know what you're going to see at the end of the year. Like you said, a team that's battling to escape relegation, they're playing a top tier team. That sometimes is the best match and best game of the year because there's something to play for. When if you don't have that, it could just be just another game, another midweek game, or another Saturday night where the interest level and the excitement maybe isn't too high. Who did you grow up supporting as far as team wise, and was there any players growing up as a kid that you modeled your game after?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up obviously supporting Aston Villa. That was a team I spent my youth career in their academy, so naturally I just kind of started following them.
They look good now, man. I mean, they're at a high level right now. Emery's done a great job.
Yeah, he's done a good job. We're flying right now, so it's nice to see. Obviously, the setup there was fantastic. So yeah, that was kind of the team that I followed, growing up. And I think the player that I probably modeled my game on the most was a player called Santi Cazorla, who's played for Arsenal. He was just he was like 5'4", 5'5", so similar like size to me, and he was playing centre midfield in the Premier League for one of the best teams in the league. And obviously, growing up, it was always like you get told here and there that you're too small to be a footballer, blah blah blah. But he was the proof that wasn't true, And I just think he was the way he played the game, left foot, right foot. I think he was obviously a joy to watch, and I kind of tried to take little bits from his game and add them into mine.
You still let that drive you now? I mean, as your size, whatever. I'm not a big guy either, 5'9". I always feel like the only way that I could compete, even playing in my men's league stuff is I got to feel like I'm 10 feet tall, right? I mean, is that still kind of the thing that drives you today? Like, what are the things that motivate you, even if it's not that, if it is that, and what else drives you?
No, I mean, I think now obviously football's probably changing a little bit.
Right.
Obviously you need coaches and teams and stuff to kind of believe in you, regardless of how tall you are or how big you are. So it's never really been something that I've like listened to, throughout my whole career. I've just thought like if I go and play my game and kind of do what I do, then obviously they'll end up having to look past that anyway, So yeah, it's never really been something that I've let, affect me. Maybe growing up at the start, maybe it adds an element of like doubt. But I think when you get past that, then you just realize that you can be any size, and it doesn't matter how tall or big you are. If you can play the game, then you're going to play at the end of the day. So yeah, that's kind of what I've carried with me, since I started playing.
Who's been the one player on your Rowdies club so far that you've gotten to know the best, or who's kind of been the funniest guy, or just like who's that one person that maybe you spent time with, or that has been like a guy that you've really bounced ideas off of more than anybody?
Yeah, honestly, I've got along with every single person. Like I don't think I could pick just one guy. I think I've tried to get to know everyone and get to know everyone's personality and how everyone is as a person. So obviously I've took the time to try to get to know everyone, individually, and then as a group, I just tried to have a laugh and a joke with everyone day in, day out. But I think off the field, there's a small group of us who live in the same like apartment complex. So naturally, we just spend more time together, like outside of the training field. So that's myself, Pacific, Nyongaberi, Wubens, Pacius, Nate Worth, and then Joey Skimmer.
Nice.
So they're the guys obviously I hang around with probably the most, like outside of the training. But when we're in, I'm trying to just talk to everyone and make sure that I get to know everyone, the same.
All right, who is your ultimate five-a-side team? You can't put yourself on it. You're the coach. You're putting your gaffer hat on here, Ollie. Your ultimate five-a-side team for your life. You got to win this game, man. This means everything. Your ultimate five-a-side. You can put a goalie in, or you don't have to put a goalie in. I'm one of those guys for five-a-side. It doesn't matter. Goalie or not, it's up to you. It's your team. Ultimate five-a-side. Who you got?
For players that I've played with?
You can do whatever you want. Whatever you want.
So any players?
All time. Yep. All time. There you go.
No goalkeeper then. No.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
I'm not having a goalkeeper. I'd have one. I'd have one defender, probably like three midfielders.
Okay.
One striker.
Right,
so any player.
Any all time. Yep.
All right, my defender. I'll probably just go like someone like Ramos or something like that.
Okay, Sergio Ramos. All right.
Yeah, he's solid.
Yeah, and he can score goals, which is I think he's got like 130 goals as defender.
Yeah. Midfield. Honestly, this is gonna sound boring, but I'll just go like the best midfield in my opinion, like ever, would be Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets. And then I'll just stick Messi up front and just let him run around and do his thing.
So you got 4 Barcelona guys and a Real Madrid guy.
Yeah. They're all like they can all speak Spanish to each other.
Exactly. Yeah, I always found that funny. It was like you look at these Spanish teams from those heydays, and it's like the whole Barcelona team, Ramos, and then a different striker because Messi wasn't there. But wow, those teams just incredible.
Yeah, midfield was crazy.
Just watching some of those videos from Xavi and Iniesta, it's amazing that obviously Busquets too, but to watch what they were able to do on the pitch was just insane. Insane. What would it mean for you? And I know, and it means a lot to the fans that are here in the Tampa Bay area to get, there's 2 stars here, and I've been asking everybody how important it would be to get that 3rd star for you, even though you're brand new, buddy. To come here and help this team that's been around 1975. This is one of the more, tradition-rich teams in the States. To help them win that 3rd star, what would that mean to you?
Yeah, obviously it would mean. Obviously, I think at the start of every season, every single team, regardless of how well they've done the year before or how well they've done in their past, every single team wants to, or they say that they want to win by the end of the year. That's obviously everyone's goal, right, like to win. Obviously the stuff happens throughout the season. Obviously you always want to win, But I think the thing that I've probably learned the most out of my career is you want to put yourself in a position by the end of the year to win. So like you can say you want to win, but when it comes to like the last 5 or 6 games, when it comes to like playoffs, you want to like be in contention or be in a position where you can give yourself the best chance to win. I think if you do that, then you take away the element of like having to win and the pressure of having to win, and rather you want to put yourself in the position where you allow yourself to be able to win. So obviously I think that's obviously something that's important. That's something that obviously drives us like every single day. And I think the players we have and the facilities we have, and obviously the home stadium we get to play, and obviously the fans we get to play in front of, I think that's going to be a big factor for us, this year. And I think it would be obviously an amazing feeling to be able to do that. But I think the most important thing is by the end of the year, when it's the last 4, 5, 6 games of the season, we're in a strong position where, we give ourselves the best chance possible to be able to win.
Yeah, and selfishly for me, I want to see some home playoff games.
Yeah, for sure.
That means a lot, man. It's a lot of fun as well. Ollie Bassett, man, thank you so much for your time today. Midfielder for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So excited to see what you can bring to the table. I've been very impressed your first 2 games. You're all over it, man. And I know once the goals start coming for you guys, they're going to come in waves. It's a good group, a good club all the way around. And, man, I sky's the limit for you, my friend. So thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this weekend, the rest of the season. Stay healthy, and I'll see you out at Al Lang here in a couple weeks, pal.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, buddy. Ollie Bassett there, Rowdies midfielder. Great to catch up with him. A lot of people have been asking me, what's the deal with Ollie? Well, we have him on the show. This is what we do here on the Jay Recher podcast, man. We bring him here on the program, get to know him. I'm excited. You see this guy on the ball. Yeah, I know. Everybody's been tuning in like, who's that guy? He's new. Like, yeah, man. This is the type of guy right here that is going to be able to take that offense to the next level and to continue to work. And you heard what he had to say, attacking midfielder, sometimes playing right behind the striker, sometimes playing with another number 10. We haven't seen Leo yet. He's not 100%. I think when this team kind of rounds into form and everybody gets healthy, you get Forrest on that back line again, you get Leo out there as another number 10. I think that's when you got to watch out for this Rowdies team. They start to the season not where they want to be, but listen, at the end of the day, 2 teams out west, we'll deal with it. Coming back out east, taking care of these teams here, I think is going to help. I'm excited for the season for the Rowdies. And make sure for all the information, go to rowdiesoccer.com. You can catch every game, Tampa Bay 44, except those 2 games, and they'll be on ESPN too. So they'll be on TV every single freaking game this year. And check out those jerseys, man, with the hoops on the sleeves. Shout out to Pacifique and the Ngabiri, called up for the Burundi World Cup qualifying. So we always love to see that international representation as well for our guys. Rowdiesoccer.com, USLchampionship.com. You can go get those flex plans now. Again, rowdiesoccer.com. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me. A big thank you to Marc Topkin, for Erik Erlendsson, and for Ollie Bassett joining us on the program today. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at Jay Recher. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. We'll be live tomorrow. I know at the very least, Ed Encina is going to join us at 1:30. Got a couple of other irons in the fire to have guests join us on the program, and then off on Friday because I'll be at the Valspar. I love you all. Thank you for all the love and support. Continue to like and subscribe and do all that stuff because I can't do it without you. All right, have a great rest of your Wednesday. Don't forget, the Beckles and Recher podcast coming up at around 3:15 today. Go check us out, 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard at the Dignitary Cafe. We will be there. Tune into the podcast. We're talking a lot of fun stuff around 3:15 today right here on my YouTube page. So, check us out. Going to be a lot of fun. Love you all. We'll see you tomorrow at noon right here on the Jay Recher podcast. I'm gone.